I'm Ryan Steck, and you are watching the Break It Down Show.
Boy, oh boy, we are some busy characters. How about you break your news right now? What's the latest in Ryan's world?
A lot's going on. A couple of things. So I have a novella out today called Red Christmas, prequel to my own series. Also today, making its way across the internet is news that I signed a deal to take over Ted Bell's New York Times bestselling Alex Hawke series. So I'm pretty pumped up about that. And that's made today extra special for sure.
Yeah, that's a big deal, man. That is like a really, really big deal. Look, it's news, right? But to be allowed to write on someone else's banner, that is not insignificant, And it's not like you've been writing for 55 years and you're like, I know all these, like you're, I'll say, relatively new to this game. It's such a big leg up, though, man. I'm super happy for you.
Yeah, thank you. I've edited for a long time. I worked with Ted for about a decade in a lot of different roles. He was a mentor to me. He was a really, really close friend. Honestly, he passed away in January. When I got the news, I had to lock myself away up here in my office. I sobbed like a little kid. Really hard loss for me. Never in a million years did I ever think this opportunity would come up, that I might be able to carry forth his legacy and write in Alex Hawke's voice. But it's just so funny. Like 10 years worth of conversations with Ted. If I ever thought I'd be in this position today, taking over this series, writing these characters, I would have had so many different questions for him, yeah, right. So but I know this series intimately. I knew Ted very well. And I will just say that, I think Hawke is a great character. There's nobody like him in the genre today. This guy is absolutely cold-blooded, stone cold, but he's also the sixth richest dude in England. Coming from my series, right? I write Matthew Red books. They're set in Montana. Red is a cattle rancher by day, FBI fly team leader by night. He's broke. He's kind of poor. Like, then you switch over, and I'm writing now Alex Hawke, who's international, this big MI6 agent, super rich, can have anything he wants. I won't give too much away, but I will say the first big purchase I made in the Hawke world was I upgraded Alex G4. So readers, when they see Monarch, whenever that's the first book, by the way. So the first book's called Monarch, Ted Bell Monarch. That will come out early 25, and you'll notice that he's got a new private jet that he's flying in. But yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous responsibility, and it means the world to me.
Yeah, what a fun thing, man. It's a neat, and you're also writing for your friend, right? And so like you're really keeping him alive.
Yeah, well, listen, I kind of feel like if you're gonna estate write, so like you write for an estate and all that, it would almost be infinitely easier if you didn't have an emotional relationship and attachment to the author who has passed away. And that's not to minimize anyone else's work or job. There's so many phenomenal authors out there doing great jobs, keeping characters alive. But I don't feel like it's just, hey, go write your best chapter. Like my family would tell you, already in this process, there's days I worked 18 hours straight in my office. I'll get something that I think is a pretty good Ryan Steck chapter, but I think that sounds way too much like me. I don't think anyone could ever sound like Ted Bell, but my promise to his readers, to fans, is every time Hawke opens his mouth, you're going to get the Alex Hawke that you know and you love. And there's a very deliberate cadence that he speaks with. He's very proper. He has a really distinct and selective word choice. So it's nailing those little things, I think, go a long ways. But I do, to your point, I really love Ted. The guy mentored me. He was so good to me. I don't want to let him down. His daughter, Birdie's become a really good friend of mine. I don't want to let her down. So I do. I feel the weight of it, but I'm also having a lot of fun.
I know a number of guys who do this type of thing for other very big brands. And, everybody has to figure out, like, what voice are you writing in? I mean, Louis L'Amour has not written a book in a long time now at this point. Same thing with Clancy, but it's just, you've got to find your voice. And if your voice is trying to be akin to his, then slowly you cleave it out over time. But that is something you're going to have to deal with completely to where you're like, this is how I write these books, and you know it, right? And you have time to figure that out. But you're just beginning that journey. Have you talked to any of your friends in the writing world to see what they think in terms of how you take on a project and voice like this?
Oh, yeah. And let me say too that the editor who bought the books, who worked with Ted at Penguin, Tom Colgan, he's an icon. He oversees all the Clancy's and all that stuff. He's been a great resource too. He gave me a lot of good advice. Yes, I talked to Don Bentley and Kyle Mills and others I'm sure I'm forgetting about. Yeah, man, there's a fine line of, I don't want to write like a forgery Ted Bell novel. This is going to be a different author, right? But I don't want to sound like me either, if that makes any sense. So I feel like it's coming in somewhere right between me and Ted. And I think that it works. You know, I had to submit a sample. So his daughter, Birdie has read and seen, you know, where I'm going with this and what I'm doing, and getting her to sign off really. And I don't want anyone to take this wrong. As long as she likes it, I did my job. You know what I mean? I want all the readers to love it. I want all the fans, but like, this was her dad. And Birdie is just great, man. She's really sweet, really supportive. And so if I can turn something into her that she likes, I feel like I did my job. So, yes, I went to a lot of people. This conversations came up like May, June about this. So this has been an ongoing thing. I've talked to a lot of people really privately. Simon Gervais was another one. He's a good friend of mine, gave me a lot of good advice. But I think the consensus was, you know, the more I talked to people, they knew about my relationship with Ted. They knew how much I loved him and how close we were. And everyone was like, man, you got to do it. And so it just got to the point where I was like, yeah, I got to do it. And I will say this, having worked with Ted for so long, if any other writer would have got it and I had no involvement, it probably would have broke my heart. I've been crushed. So here we are. I'm thrilled. I'm deep into writing it. I mean, that's the thing, is like it's announced today. So people probably think I'm just now starting to write it. That's not really the case. I turned in Red number 4. So I have my 3rd Red book comes out today is the prequel novella, Red Christmas, available in ebook exclusively. Next June is Out for Blood. And then in 2025, it'll be summer, probably July. I have Red number 4 coming out. I turned that in and then got to work on this. So because I already had a sample, I had the first few chapters, I was a little bit ahead. So, you know, I'm pretty well into it right now. And I would say every chapter is, you know, getting a little easier, finding my stride with it.
Yeah. Did you have any idea this was coming while Ted was alive?
No.
So how did that go down? When did that conversation begin, and how did you handle that?
I think around like May, June was when it first kind of like had first come up. And honestly, I sort of remember maybe the first conversation when it came up, my agent, we shared an agent, and he said something, you know, about, would you have any interest being involved? And I remember thinking, yeah, I hope they let me work with whatever writer signs on, you know, you know, but, and then it hit me. Oh, like he means for me to write it. And I had to really sit back because it was a lot of emotions. Like I said, I cried like a child when Ted died in January. I will say it's almost funny, you know, like I remember my last conversation with him very well. And I don't want to give the plot away, but there was one thing that, you know, it seemed a certain way in his last book. And I said, you know, it's interesting that you did that. And he was like, oh, you think that's going to stay that way? And I was like, oh, you're not gonna? And he was like, guess you'll find out. You don't know how bad I wish I could go back and ask him now, like, hey, wait, time out. What do you mean by that? You know, what do you really want to happen there? I replay a lot of conversations. I've gone through thousands of emails and texts with him over the last decade. Monarch, even the title, I will tell you, years back, he wanted to call one of his books Monarch, and the publisher thought a different one fit better. They loved the title, didn't think it fit. So I have an email from him where I said, you know, what a bummer, that's a great title. And he was like, it's a great title. One day that will be the title of a Hawk novel, buddy. Count on it. So when it came time to, pitch the book that I would write, I sat down and I thought, you know what, let's write Monarch. And I had a lot of conversations with Ted about, different ideas that he had, that I had, that we'd run through each other, and just it all kind of spoke to me in a way that I thought, you know what, I think this is a book Ted would write.
Love it. Love it. Well, I mean, I'm glad to talk about Ted some more if you want to, but I also want to talk about your latest book, the one that's in pre-sale right now, Out for Blood. The link is right down here below, everybody. And you know what I always say? If you're going to buy it, buy two, and buddy read it with somebody. What a great gift. The gift of reading with a friend.
I will not be mad if you buy two, yeah.
Yeah, man. I'm not even like, I say that like I'm a little bit joking, but I'm not. I'm dead serious. Like, buy it for a friend. And even if they don't read it, you're still doing a wonderful thing for somebody who's built something wonderful. So that's a great way to support. Anyhow, enough of me pitching the book. Everybody knows to buy your books because you're a great writer. But let's talk a little bit about it. And is this the next one in the sequence? You talked about it being a prequel, so that part is not in sequence. But was this planned?
All right, so no, not really. So my first book, Fields of Fire, came out last year. My second one came out, Lethal Range, came out in August. My third full-length novel is called Out for Blood. That comes out June 4th next year. But today I have a novella. It's my first novella, and it's called Red Christmas. It's holiday themed in the sense that it's set on Christmas Eve, and it follows a much younger Matthew Red. So it's a prequel to my actual novels, right? What I wanted to do was go back in time and show how this hardened Marine raider that you meet in book one becomes that battle-tested operator that we know and love. The reason I thought Red Christmas and writing this out of sequence and going back to tell the prequel was important. I mean, there were several reasons, but in book one, Red's relationship with his father is talked about a lot, but his father is dead, and that's the reason he comes home in book one. I never got to show them on the page together, so that was important to me. I wanted to go back in time, show them together. I didn't think a prequel novel would work for Red Christmas. And the reason is it's not a feel-good story. This is Black Hawk Down meets Die Hard, but it covers difficult topics. Like, what does it look like when an 18-year-old kid is called onto the battlefield, and sees death and has to kill and all these things for the first time in the name of his country? What do you go through? And it's not designed to be a feel-good story so much as it is a very raw, real look at the life of a soldier. It's dedicated to all the men and women who served our great country. And I will say it's about 30,000 words, so about a third the length of a novel. The last chapter, I think, is the best writing I've ever done. I think from an emotional standpoint, once you get there and you understand what I was trying to do, and then you flip the page and I kind of explain it to the reader. Also, if you get Red Christmas available today, it's an ebook only at launch. So it's only on like Kindle and Amazon books and stuff like that. It has a two-chapter preview for Out for Blood. So if you buy it today, you get the full Red Christmas story plus 2 chapters of Out for Blood. Now, next summer, when Out for Blood finally hits stores, every hardcover, no matter where you get it, doesn't matter if you get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, doesn't matter where you get it, every hardcover is going to be signed by me, and in the back of it will have Red Christmas printed. So if you do buy Out for Blood, or you pre-order it, to give to a friend, every copy comes signed, every copy has Out for Blood in the back, but it's only the hardcover. So keep that in mind.
Okay, and the link for Red Christmas is now down below too. These are all over in the comment section. So if you guys are trying to buy both, which you should be doing, that's how you do it right there. You grab those links and take it to Amazon, and lickety split, you'll have your orders in. All right, so we did a little bit of business there. I hear new modern ways to market your book, right? We're always trying to have like the special edition cover. Obviously, you're going to sign books and all these things. But this is one of the newer ways to do it, including, kind of cross-promoting 2 projects. What else is out there in terms of like, look, the book field is so crowded. It's so crowded. How do you, and you know so much about this, how do you advise people to either, one, support their artists that they love, or if they're thinking about jumping into the novella world or the full book world, how does one stand out?
Yeah, so if you want to support a writer that you really like, buy the book and even if you didn't get it on Amazon, leave a review on Amazon and on Goodreads. It helps readers, it helps authors so much, and helps other readers find those books. It really makes a bigger impact than you think it does, and I sincerely mean that. So even if it's not for me, if there's a writer out there that you really love their book and their work and you just want to support them, I promise the best way to help, leave them a review on Amazon and Goodreads. As far as, standing out in a crowded field, man, I think we're all trying to figure that out. It's it is so hard out there right now. And I mean, look, one of the reasons, and this is funny that now that I'm writing for an estate, right? One of the reasons it's so much harder today. So when you go back 20 years, if you were just getting your start, when Vince Flynn and Daniel Silva and Brad Thor and Ted Bell and all these people were, even Lee Child, they were just coming up. They weren't so much competing with the authors before them. The authors who, but like before them, they would pass away. Those books kind of stopped. I think it was really like Clancy. We started seeing the characters are living on, and now all of them do. So if you're a new author today, you're not just competing with you're not only competing with Jack Carr and Mark Graney and Brad Taylor, you're also competing with Clancy and Ted Bell and Vince Flynn and, all these other authors. And I don't think that's a bad thing, but it makes it a lot harder. The threshold and the standard, right, is really been raised. Like, you can't just come in with a decent book. Readers would much rather go pick up a character they already know and love from another writer that they know can really deliver. So I really think you can never take a book off. You really have got to deliver from your debut, your first novel on, and you just have to keep raising the stakes with each book. And I think that's the best way to do it. And then we'd all love to hit the Times list on book number 1, right? You'd love to come out, sell 1 million copies of your first book. What you really just want to do, get out and engage with your readers, build your own community that way. And that's been a focus for me. And I'm really thankful for everyone who's taken the time to read my books.
I appreciate everybody watching and commenting too. David, Thriller fan, has been commenting, and I'm trying to respond to everybody in time as they're doing it. So keep it up. I love it. I love the action. Here's a funny thing. And this is in no way to make this about me, but I was a spy, right? And so if I were to sit down and write a novella, I would be in the same spot that you just described. Like, hey, this is your first book, and maybe you do okay, but chances are you're going to have some work to do. You have to build an audience. The other funny thing about like saying, hey, I was a spy, is that people instantly reject that reality. And so much so that even when I was working, I would say it to the people that I'm talking to in the field, and they'd be like, yeah, whatever. Like no one ever believes you, right? But the reality is, when you really do it, it's such a fanciful, fantastical, impossible thing. You really can be straightforward. So I wanted to say that because I think it's a funny juxtaposition where you're not supposed to talk about it, but so by simply talking about it, no one believes you. And the other thing is just because you work in a field like Jack Carr did, it doesn't make you have the chops to write and have Jack Carr's success. As a matter of fact, I would say Jack is exceptional in the fact that he has taken his direct experience and turned it into one of the very top, if not the top name in the field right now.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think he's sitting atop the throne at the moment. Definitely. It doesn't hurt that, look, he's very well connected. He outworks anybody. He has mastered the marketing, and he's such a great guy. And that's genuine. That's not fake. That's not something that he just fronts for, readers and interviews. Like, he genuinely is a really great guy. And so when people get to meet him, there's this expectation that when they say, like, don't meet your heroes, right? He's one you want to meet. Jack is for sure one you want to meet.
I think that term is out of date. I think that people have learned how to be successful. Look, there's some stars you don't want to meet, right? And sometimes it's very impersonal at a meet and greet, but I'm talking like really meeting somebody, sitting with Jack or sitting with somebody else. I've had the luxury to do that any number of times, and people are just wonderful. I think that phrase is unfair to people who are heroes.
I mean, look, I'll speak to our industry, right?
Yeah.
If your hero is Jack Carr or Mark Graney or Brad Taylor or Don Bentley or Simon Gervais or any of these guys, meet them.
Mhm.
Brad Thor, these are great guys. Kyle Mills, great guy. Like, they're rock star people. They're really good men. Um, yes, I mean, look, is every celebrity you could meet, is that gonna, go the way that you hope it does? Probably not.
Probably not. Yeah.
I will say this: like, if you get the chance to meet one of your favorite authors at an event like BoucherCon or Thriller Fest, you will walk away feeling like, man, that's the person I always wanted to meet. I've always loved them. Such a great guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, on the other hand, there are people who are who are shitty, and you find out, look, some people just they haven't lived in a real world, and maybe that's the difference between the authors and the hyper famous people who are trying to
Yeah.
get away from all of the attention and get away from all of the pitch. Because when you show up to talk to somebody who's famous like that, you own everybody else's pitch, everybody else's failing when you show up, and they have to have a wall up, and it really does drive them all of those folks to a place where they wouldn't normally go, right? And so to get them with the guard down is pretty rare.
I totally agree with that. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
look, you got to respect space too. Like, you go to Thriller Fest and Lee Child can't even walk to the bathroom without being just mobbed by fans and readers and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, read the room, right? Read the room, read the person a little bit. But yes, I think you're right to an extent. And but again, even those events, you catch those people at the right time, and yeah, they're gonna take a picture and they're gonna sign your book, and it's gonna be it's gonna be really cool and fun for you. And so I would encourage that. Like, go to Thriller Fest, go to BoucherCon. If you love thrillers, if you love these authors, you'll have the time of your life. It's like Comic-Con, but for readers.
Yeah. That's a good point. Go to the fests and meet these guys in that setting, because that's one of the reasons why they have these things. And
Yes.
You can always do this too. You go up to their little section and you catch them on the floor and you just go, "Hey man, can I buy you a drink?" And he might say, "You know what? Yeah, right now, let me get the hell out of here and go grab a vodka Collins or something like that."
I mean, look, yeah, the biggest tip ever is that the bars are where you want to prowl if you want to meet your favorite author after these events. That's where they all go to hang out. So if you want to see Brad Thor and Jack Carr, you're probably going to see them together having a drink at the bar after the event.
That's probably true. By the way, I got a chance to go to Greg Hurwitz's house and interview him there. And again, just a wonderful dude. And you look around and it can be intimidating because his house is very nice and it's in a very nice place. And a lot of his work is on the walls. And all of a sudden you realize, wow, this guy is really accomplished. But super sweet guy. And we had the best conversation. And we hardly talked about books at all because books is just like what he does for a living. But the day-to-day things that he does, they're fascinating.
Yeah. He works too, man. He works. Like, he just that guy blows through keyboards more than anyone I've seen in my life, because he's writing books and he's writing screenplays and he never stops. And I love him to death, man. He's such a good guy.
Yeah. When you're going through, I mean, when you're trying to break down new books and do the things that you do for your audience at Real Spy, how do you blend that work in with your writing work?
Ooh, it's interesting. That's a good question. I'm stepping back slowly from the day-to-day on the Book Spy. I will still do every review because I don't trust anyone enough yet to. I know my audience, right? Like, I don't know. We're up to 2 million readers. I don't know them all personally, but I do feel like I have a general understanding of what it is they want and look for in a book. And I don't trust anyone else enough yet to make those recommendations, but I am getting help with other things. And so, that's one thing is there's only so many hours in a day. I also have 6 kids, 5 still live at home. So, it's a little bit busy. Now I'm writing 2 books a year.
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, it is busy. Look, the whole reason my series launched when it did and why it did. I've also worked as an editor for a long time as a freelance editor with writers. So it's like, when I realized I had to write, I wanted to write. It was like, what can I write that I've never worked on, that I've never covered, that I've never seen? And I thought, we never see Mitch Rapp and Jason Bourne out west. We don't see that. So let me take this character who's 6'3", 265 pounds of muscle, just like me, and and put them out in a place where you really are a lone wolf. Like we always hear all the time, like, oh, you're the lone wolf operator, which is such an overused, played out phrase. But in Montana, in the mountains, you really are. Out there, backup is best hours away, at worst days away. And that's depending on the conditions and where you are. So when a guy like Red is in a fight for his life, it's just him. You know what I mean? And to me, that always heightened and raised the stakes a little bit and raised the tension. I will tell you, Out for Blood, again, that's in stores, available everywhere June 4th. But every hardcover is signed. Man, it was the hardest thing I've ever written. Like it was, I set the first two books up in a way that the third book really had to deliver. And it was intimidating to write because I knew I went big. I set myself up. I had to go big. So that's what I did, man. I really went for it. And you know, the funny thing is when you're the writer, you're too close. Like you don't know if it's good. So I finished it, sent it to my publisher, and they asked for a Zoom call. And I was like, oh man, I hope this thing doesn't suck. And they're going to try to break it to me that way. And instead, it was the exact opposite. We got on and they loved it. They thought it was my best work. They thought it was, you know, basically ready to go. They were going to put it straight to editing. And I was like, oh, wow, you know. And so then it's like, oh, man, if it's as good as they say it is, how I top that with Red 4, you know. But I like being out west. I think it's an area that not everyone else is exploring right now. And it's also an area that I think people want to read about because of the popularity of shows like Yellowstone.
Yeah. And also Longmire is in that set, you know, and these shows have done fantastically well, right? I mean, it's crazy. Hey, I want to ask you a question that's a little bit more dangerous, not dangerous, but you know, like it's a little more challenging. So on Twitter, and I know you're active on X as well. Someone, and this person was glad to talk on Twitter, but not glad to come on a show and talk to someone like you. But they made a comment that said, they called to the carpet military thriller writers because they often use an Islamic foil as the antagonist. And this person believed that was racist in its roots. And so, look, that person's afraid to talk openly, and that says a lot about their charge. But I want to give you a chance to kind of, because if anyone's going to know like what to talk about with this, it's going to be you. Is the thriller community acting irresponsibly? Are they being unfair? I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Not the books that I've covered. You know, no, not the books that I've covered. Talk about Vince Flynn and Brad Thor and Jack Carr, Brad Taylor, Joel C. Rosenberg. Those are guys that have really dealt with that topic, I think, very well. Daniel Silva, Don Bentley. None of my books, you know, have had any sort of Islamic extremism to date. I don't know that it's something I won't write. If it's going to keep being a problem, it's probably something I'll touch on at some point. You know, I think when you turn on the news today, I think it's pretty obvious, you know, I think people that pay attention, you know, they realize what's going on and who's at fault. And maybe neither side is completely innocent in anything, but yeah. You know what I mean? I don't think it's that hard to look at it if you really pay attention and you look for truth to develop an opinion on that. Do I think authors are painting them as, you know, racist and stuff? No, I don't. I think when you read about quotes from Osama bin Laden, I think it's pretty clear, right? What his intentions were, what his goals were. I think when when a lot of authors portray that was authentic.
Yeah, and it's you know, it's you have to use the bad guys at the time. No one's got these big lamentations like, oh, we used to write about the Soviets. Oh, you know, like no one cares about that. You know,
the interesting thing about thrillers, okay, is that Brad Meltzer once said a thriller writer's job is to beat the headlines. So if that's true, then we're all trying to do the same thing, right? So inevitably, people are going to be writing about similar topics. So they're going to have similar bad guys. There was literally like the year of ISIS in the publishing world, where everyone, Thor and Kyle Mills on behalf of Vince Flynn and Joel Rosenberg, especially, he was the first one to put ISIS in a book. Ben Coves at the time, Mark Graney at the time. Do I think that we were unfair to ISIS? Do I think we bullied ISIS? No.
Right.
No. No. We're talking about the same savages that are beheading people on live TVs and YouTubes and live streams. No, I think they were pretty vocal about what their mission was, and that if anyone thinks it was mean of writers to portray them negatively in their books, then I think probably, thrillers and fiction in general aren't for them.
Yeah. And I guess the continuation of that is then you could also do the story how the Top Gun sequel did, and you could just have a nondescript enemy, right? Because you don't really identify them ethnically or geographically, right? There's mountains, and that's somehow all you get, right? They could have been anybody. And it didn't hurt the story device, but at some point you do need a bad guy, a real bad guy to latch onto. You can't always keep the bad guy that far distant from being identified.
I also think you can't take shortcuts with books the way you can in Hollywood with movies and stuff. You can do smoke and mirrors and not identify a bad guy, but in a novel, if you don't do that, people are going to notice right away.
Yeah, that's a good point. The requirement to develop those characters in a book, you're right. That is there. And then I guess the other thing to say is has anyone actually done a survey of who the bad guys are in these stories? Because I would imagine, pick a country, there's probably someone there. I mean, it's and there's plenty of internal bad guys in every thriller.
I mean, that's the other thing is even of late, a lot of these even my own books, not to give anything away, a lot of the enemy has come from within.
Yeah.
Yes, China and North Korea and Russia's dominated lately, you know, and yes, you get groups like ISIS and whatnot, but I don't think the genre as a whole is locked on to look, these things, the topics change with the ebbs and flow of everyday news. Clancy was one of the first to really start nailing Russia, but the reason I think Vince Flynn became as big as he did was that post Clancy era, he was one of the first to start writing about Middle Eastern terrorism and tackling those issues with Mitch Rapp. And so, I think writers have done a good job bouncing around. I don't think we ever sit down and go, oh, I really want to write them as a bad guy. I think you pay attention to the news and you're doing your best to see, and the people that you talk to, by the way, that's a big one. I'll give you a good story. Joel Rosenberg and I have the same publisher, but way before I was with them, he was writing a book. I believe it's called The Third Target. I want to say, if I'm wrong, forgive me, Joel, because he's a good friend of mine. I think it's called The Third Target. And it involves ISIS. Now, at the time, nobody heard of ISIS. And he had sent it in, and they were like, why don't you just fictionalize the group? Why don't you just not name them? And Joel tells this story, and he came back and was like, no, the people I talked to say they're going to really be a problem. And then shortly after, you had Obama call them the JV team. Joel really stuck to his guns and was like, I want ISIS to be the bad guys. You know what happened next? They start beheading people on live streams and carrying out attacks. They had to move up the publication of that book to get it to readers faster because it literally was playing out in real time. And when he wrote it, they were like, are you sure about this? Maybe pick someone people have heard of. I mean, that's how fast these things change. And then you have the deadlines of an author. We're typically writing books a year before they're going to come out. Sometimes we turn them in a year before they're going to come out. Like I just turned in Red 4. That thing won't come out until 2025,
Wow. Yeah. Right.
So you're projecting, you're trying to figure out where you think, and then you've got to go based off of not only the real world, but your own world, the own fictional universe that you've now established and you're creating and you're developing, right? So do I think they've been unfair? I really don't. I also wouldn't say it's true that Middle Eastern terrorism is dominated, especially as of late. I think, Russia and enemies from within has probably been something that's been more explored.
Since we're mentioning and name checking all these authors, I got to put my buddies up there. Andrews and Wilson.
Buddies of mine too. In fact, I just talked to Brian today.
Did you really? Yeah. And these are wonderful dudes. Look, and Brian and Jeff, you're just not going to convince me that they're doing things to be evil or to be dismissive or to be racist. They're just not those dudes, Yeah. I'm glad we covered that because it's very easy for someone to sit on X and drop a poison arrow and shoot it at everybody without thinking about it. But then when I pop in and say, "Hey, I know a bunch of these guys. Why don't we have a show and talk it out?" And that's what we're supposed to do. And when that person's like, "Oh, I just," they disappear into the crowd. Like, no, So I admire your guts in talking about this and standing up. I do want to ask you this because we have this Hamas-Israel conflict. I can't think of a book, and I don't read enough of them to say anything definitively here. And I'm asking you this, where Mossad or Israeli people are portrayed in this evil kind of light. Are they hands off?
I think that's probably a fair statement.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
think that's probably a fair statement. Well, they're also they're really good at what they do. They get plenty of screen time, right? I mean, the Mossad is, come on, they get screen. I mean, look, Daniel Silva does a really good job with them. Brad Taylor does a really good job with them. He's got a character named Shoshana, one of my favorite characters ever. Mm-hmm. She's Israeli. She's Mossad. They get screen time in a lot of books. Are they portrayed as like evil? No. Now, are they always perfect? No. I just can't name those books because it would be like a spoiler, where it's like a twist that you find out some things. But no, I think overall that's probably a true statement.
Yeah. I think we talked about this before, but again, I'm a guy who's actually been a spy. So when I talk about these are the things that bug me about characters. When they take the field agent guy and he's 15 people in one, like, all right, well, that's fine. We need Jason Bourne to be smart and be powerful. But when they make the bookish computer guy in there that tried to tag along and he's like, I can't handle the gun, they turn him into Fredo. I don't like that. And the other thing is there's always a damn mole in all of these intelligence agencies. For me, and again, I've got a very specific set of skills that make it this way, but that's very tropey, and it takes me out of the book when they do these things.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got to be done right if you do it. I think there are for sure. Look, there's always been moles. There's always been people for every country, for every agency. I think we live in a day and age where everyone is about self-pleasing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a whole nother conversation, but I think that's why religion is so taboo now. You can't talk at everything. Everyone's offended by things. I think everyone is in self-pleasure. You know what I mean? So unfortunately, I think a lot of people could be bought. I don't think any agency sitting around going, hey, I think we're good. We'll never have a mole. I don't think that at all. I think that's why they're all so careful, right? I think it's fair to say you have people that is like definitely don't have as much love of country. If you even just look, America seems more divided than ever in a lot of ways. So, I think, is it a trope to have a mole? My answer to that would be how it's uncovered, what their role is, and how you portray it is what sets it apart and makes it more realistic and different.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. It's just, it's like, when the mole is coming, look, I'm old enough that I've seen a lot of the movies. I've seen a lot of the story devices. So it is harder for me to do it. Then you mix in my experience and I'm just like, oh man, like people will recommend like, oh, you should watch the Jack Ryan series on Amazon. And I'm like, no, thanks. I can't enjoy those kind of shows for the most part because I can't simply give up everything and jump into the story.
Sure. Yeah. Well, what's funny is I've worked with a lot of writers as an editor.
Yeah. And
I can remember this is probably 8-9 years ago, but I worked with someone and they were writing and I was editing and it was like a stakeout scene. And I was like, we need more. This needs to happen. That needs to happen. And they were like, you don't understand. I've lived this life. That doesn't happen. Stakeouts are boring. And I'm
Right,
like, yeah,
yeah.
but readers don't care. They don't want to read that. They are not going to read this chapter where absolutely nothing happens in the stakeout just so it can be accurate. So I do think, I think on some level, people that have lived a life, like there's always that advantage of, I've been there, done that. So I have that authentic, been there, done that realism. But I think they're also at a disadvantage because they feel like, no, I have to get this right, or everyone's going to know, they would know I would know better, blah, blah, blah. But what are we supposed to do as writers? Well, if you're writing fiction, you're writing thrillers, your goal is to entertain. You're telling a story that's made up to entertain. So sometimes there's not a reason for why things happen. They just do. They just have to, But I've had those conversations with a lot of people during my career as an editor, for sure.
Yeah. I've got a little novella on my desktop, and I mess around with the genre, but it's not something that I pursue. I would say it's mostly a hobby, right? Maybe one day I'll publish something, but and I struggle with that, right? Like I struggle with the pace of things, and what I try to do to cover that up is I try to put real elements in there. Like when you sit on a stakeout, right? You have to call the local authority and say, "Listen, America." And you would say, hey, we are working in conjunction with this court now, blah, blah, we're going to be doing a surveillance in this area. Because otherwise, when a neighbor calls, like you're not invisible, right? When you do surveillance, someone's like, why is that person sitting in their car in our neighborhood, right? And they call, they see something, they say something. And so these are things that have to happen. And then inevitably someone will come knock on your window. Okay, what do you do? And you're like, oh, I'm just waiting for someone, whatever, you come up with your cover. But the other thing is like when you sit there, you take your seatbelt off. And that's a tradecraft thing because you want to look like you're not sitting in a car waiting to go somewhere. You're just like, you're trying to look normal. So there's all these little details that you can add in there. But 12 hours of doing nothing is 12 hours of doing nothing. Nobody wants to read that.
Yeah, it's a boring chapter. I mean, look, again, it's a very fine line of where do you blur realism for entertainment value, right? I think this will not be true for every reader, but I do think the majority of the readers would rather be entertained. That's why that's why Fast and the Furious and Mission Impossible make billions of dollars with every movie. Actually nothing in the Fast and Furious films is realistic, right?
Yes, that's true. That's true.
But they're fun. Even I roll all the time like, oh my gosh, that's so stupid. Dominique Toretto just fought 80 dudes that are all bigger than him, and he somehow won that fight. But at the end of the day, you're entertained and you had fun, and that's what mattered. Look, man, the point of fiction, right? People are spending their hard-earned money. The economy is not great right now. I think money is hard to make. But even when they're giving up their money, they're investing their time. That is something you will never get back. There is no better economy or worse economy for your time. You have a limited amount of time right on this earth. So when you spend those 6 to 8 hours reading a book, I want you to feel like not only did you get your money's worth, it was worth your time. And so what are they buying? What is the reader buying from you? Well, with fiction and with thrillers, an escape. You're buying an escape. You're buying entertainment. This is a tough, hard world, man. I think it's tough to live in today's world for so many people. So you're buying an escape. You're buying, if it's movie, you're buying 90 minutes to 2 hours worth of just distract me. And when you're buying a book, you're hoping to get lost in this universe with these characters and to get your mind off of, the mortgage that's coming due or the groceries that you don't have or whatever it may be. I think life is hard for a lot of people. Our job is to entertain them and to give them an escape.
Yeah, no, that's fair. There is an exception to this rule, and for whatever reason, we get into our gear porn, and it's like you have to name check the right kind of knife, and oh boy, when you release the trigger on this weapon, it gives a clunk, and this one it's a click, and boy, oh boy, if you get that stuff wrong, they want that realism when it comes to the gear. Why is that?
Yeah, I think because the people that read these books are so like a fan of those things that those details. Look, I'm a firm believer. If you make a stakeout short and action-packed, readers are cool with it. But if you put safety on a Glock, now they're taken right out of the story. They're like, oh, come on, this isn't real. It's the little things that you can just get right. The rest you're bending for entertainment's sake, right? So just do your research and get these things right. I also think readers know those things, and when it is something that and you've experienced yourself, Not everyone's been on a stakeout. A lot of people have shot Glocks, right?
Right.
So when it's something you've experienced and then you're like, no, but that's wrong, then it pulls you out of the story.
For sure. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Well, there's another side to this that a lot of writers won't talk about, but we get offers. Even I've had offers of like, hey, put this in the book and I'll send it to you for free. Right. That's definitely a thing. So some of the branding, not everyone, for sure, not everybody. And a lot of writers will just write in stuff that they love, that they use, that they trust. Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay. There's absolutely like, I wouldn't call it endorsement deals, but like product placement because they send you things.
Sure.
The other thing is, I mean, if you were to say buy something or say you wanted to go on a vacation somewhere and it just so happened that you were also writing about that location, that is called a tax write-off. So, you know, I mean, we laugh and joke about it. I signed my first book deal and I upgraded my vehicle and had it, you know, some custom stuff done and rims and windows blacked out and stuff like that. And I like one of the first things I said to my agent was, how many pages does this car have to be in for me to get like a tax write-off? Like, you know, we joke, but there is some truth to that. So I think product placement has become a thing where, yes, we're able to write in, and I'll speak to me, not to call anybody out, but stuff that we write in that we really love, that we really use. But there's other times that, you know, brands might say, hey, put this in there. I would love to send this to you. Or I'm going to send this to you. And if you like it, consider putting it in your book type of thing. That does happen.
Yeah. I do have to mention Jack Carr because last time I had him on the show, he had name checked Joe Rogan's podcast. I'm like, dude, help us other veterans out and have podcasts. You can lift us up. No, Joe doesn't need a hand up. Joe, you know, it's cool that you can mention it, but you got so many cool things. But, you know, anyhow. That's just me complaining.
I think Rogan might be doing okay.
Yeah, he might be doing all right. You know, yeah. Jack should mention his own podcast. Anyhow, it is interesting with the product placement thing, and you don't want to be a sellout, and yet you want to sell, right? And there's no problem with that. And so if you're going to go set your thing in Jamaica for a very special Steck Christmas with you know, whichever character you want, like why not, right? Like why not build content around where you go?
Well, look, the other side to it too is like I know I have a friend who there's like a gun company, and they're very much like, if you feature this gun and your character uses this gun, you know, we'd love to do a cross promotional thing. So then they want to buy X number of copies of that writer's next book and have them sign and, you know, give away to like employees or at events and stuff like that. So, I mean, there's a lot of variables that go into things like that.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a different thing altogether. And it goes back to your work on Real Book Spy, but you reach a level, and I think you're at this level. I'm at this level with my show. You know, my show it's been pretty big when we got started early, but then the competition got massive and COVID kind of shrunk everything down. And so my show is right where it is, you know, and I love it. And it creates opportunities for me, but it's not like, hey, this thing makes me $40,000 a year. Like that's not a thing. So there's money that comes in, but it doesn't appear that I'm going to be able to get it pushed over the hump. But I keep doing it because I get to meet you and I get to have all these exposures to all these different things. And I've reached a point where if the things that I'm working on right now continue to go in the right direction, I may have to turn my show off. And it's a success because I've become too busy to have a show. I have other things to do. And already, like I used to be able to put 5 shows out a week. I can't do that anymore. There's just too much. There's too many other opportunities out there. And so you must be feeling a similar thing. You kind of alluded to it before, but your success as a writer, now writing in 2 series, and you're going to get something else that's going to fall into your lap. Next thing you know, you're going to have to write your own screenplays, and you're going to be like, "Hey, I'm going to have someone else." You have a bigger audience than I do with your website, but you're going to have to find someone else to do that because you can't afford to run this little dinky side project, right? Like you have to focus where the actual money and the opportunity is.
Yeah, I think those are tough conversations, but they're good problems to have.
Yeah, for sure, right? And the other thing to say about this is, like when we started this show, we thought people were going to click on our Amazon link, and that was going to bring in money. We would talk to a bunch of comedians, and we would grow that way. You know, we have an Amazon link. I'm the all-time clickingest Amazon link from my show person. You know, it's just like I'm the only one ever does it. But the reality is you don't know where you're going to go. Like, you have to go out and produce and stay consistent and connect with your fans, connect with your friends, and go forward. But it's not like people are like, then you got a niche, and then you got to sell your book, or you got to sell your class, or you got to sell your course. That isn't necessarily the case. You have to find the thing that you can do enough so that the opportunities mount up and potentially kill off your show.
Yeah, I'm big about always pushing to grow. So I have a Discord. I'm on Twitch. I haven't been on Twitch a lot lately. My wife had some health issues. There's been a lot going on behind the scenes, but but I'll get back to that. And I still do. I interact with my own readers and community playing games. My best friend is a character in my series, so I play games with him so my readers can get to know him. I think that's really important. But then I'm pushing the Book Spy forward. So I started interviewing authors on Twitch. I mean, the numbers have been stupid on that. It's on Twitch, those interviews live for 60 days, and then they self-delete off the Twitch servers. So my daughter and I are going to launch a podcast, and we're pulling all those. But we had Jack Carr on, did 60,000 views. We had Brad Thor on, did 92,000 views over 60 days. I mean, that's wild. I don't even know how it did that. I don't even know why it did that. I mean, I love Brad to death, but I have no idea what internal algorithms that tripped. TJ Newman came on and we did 48,000 views. I don't even know how or why. I'd be lying if I said, Simon Gervais just came on and he's over 20,000, and Kyle Mills was on and he's, I think, hovering 40-something thousand views. I don't know what that is. I don't know why that happens. But I'm anxious to figure it out. That's kind of what drives me, is how do you grow? How do you get bigger? How do you reach more people? I don't think a lot of people realize that a huge demographic of thriller readers is 65 plus. I'm not putting down anyone 65 plus. Thank you. I love you. Thank you for reading my books and my friends' books and for reading the Book Spy. We have got to engage a younger audience. I mean, we have to. The reason audiobooks are so popular, and this is my opinion, is because it's the only way younger generations will take these books in. There's no way that teenagers and 20-something-year-old kids and young adults are going to sit and give 100% of their attention to a book. They're not going to do it. They don't give 100% of their attention to anything or anyone, right? Even when they're eating, they're taking pictures of their dinner plates to put on Instagram that nobody cares about, but they have to do it, right?
Yeah.
Social media is such a thing now. And I think audiobooks, the only way you can take in these stories, and you're working out or you're running or you're cooking or you're driving, you're doing whatever. So I think we've got to engage a younger audience. So that's the thing that drives me, is how do we continue to do that? Now, look, for me, the drive is still there because I'm in the book business. If I have a platform that sells books and I'm also an author, that's pretty solid, right? I mean, that's a platform that you can use to really help. Now, I don't want to be the guy that only pushes my own books. I half wish a real competitor to the Book Spy would raise up and do numbers like we're doing, so I could be like, hey, can you push my book? Because I don't want to be the guy that's just buy my stuff. But I do think my books fit what my audience is looking for, so I'm not afraid to do it. We just have to get creative in how we do that. But I think what drives me is, and what keeps me going is, how do you reach the younger readers, that younger audience? How do you innovate and create new things that extend what you're already doing, but reach different people?
Yeah. I got to make sure I mention this. Kat Connor, who writes, she wrote a whole series of FBI counter-terror novel thrillers, and the Break It Down show made it in one of those episodes. And I get a thrill out of it. She's like, tell me about this element of counterintelligence. And so I'll talk her through something, where she'll have me read something that she wrote, and I'm like, ooh, this and this. I don't tell her how to tell the story. I just say, look, for real, when you're sitting in a meeting with someone and you've got your partner, like you and I are on a patrol together, it's going to be my meeting, your meeting, my meeting, your meeting. That's how we're going to do it. And you're mostly going to shut up. Like, you're going to do your very best to not say one simple thing. You're there to just amplify what's heard, maybe write some notes. Maybe you feed me a question, but probably not, right? But if you don't know that, that relationship or that dynamic is there, you can't write about it. And so I was trying to get her to write like in a more real way. And then she took it and she did such a great job because she's such a great author. She took that dynamic and she used it to be like a competitive back and forth kind of thing later on. It was really cool. Sorry, I'm trying to get some of these comments up on the screen. Hey, we're almost out of time. What do you want to ask me?
How you been? We didn't get to catch up first.
Busy. Yeah, really busy. I am. I can't talk about it yet, but I'm working on something that, if it continues to go in the way that it's going, it will be. It'll be very obvious once we're able to talk about it. So it's interesting, and I'm actually picking up the PR side of what I do, because there is a lot of opportunity for me talking about my experience and how it applies to the regular world and those kind of things. So there's a lot of things in the works to update, but I can't quite update everybody on yet, but very, 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 very big things. So it's cool. It's cool.
Well, good, man.
Yeah.
I'm excited for you.
Yeah, me too. It's one of those things where it could all still kind of fall apart, but every time it doesn't, like another bolt gets put on, another bolt gets put on, and it gets stronger and stronger. And so we'll see, but yeah, I'm pretty stoked about it. And if it does go this way, then I'm going to have some tools to do some other things that I haven't been able to do because of you have to have money and access. And I'm gaining those things. So yeah, it's funny. The world works like you're, if you are a spy, the world works with spy tools, and I just apply these things in all these different directions. And over time, you can build something.
Yeah.
All right. Any last comments before I wrap this up?
I mean, I have Out for Blood next June, so let's do it again.
Yeah, let's write that. Let me put that link up here one more time. Out for Blood, bam, right there. And it's at the very top of the comments if you're looking, but there it is right there. Or just go to Amazon and type it in. Who cares about my stupid link? And then also don't forget about the other link, which is Red Christmas. And that link is right down there below. And this guy next to me here, he's dope. He's a cool dude. And I dig the heck out of you, Ryan. And I love getting a chance to chat with you.
Thank you for having me. I think I came on Pub Day for Lethal Rain, so it's becoming tradition.
That's right. That's what we do. Yeah. I always try to when the booker is like, "Hey, I'm like, what day does it come out?" Like, I used to fight. The referee's like, "Hey, touch gloves and come out fighting." I would always be the first guy to punch. I'm like, "It's time to fight." Then I'd crack him with my lead right hand, and then next thing you know, we're in a fight. So why not do it on publishing day? It's fun. One more comment here, and I'm gonna throw it up, and then we are really gonna bust out of here. Hang on there. I'm gonna say goodbye to you proper, but let me run these credits. Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you.